are the rules of playing tic-tac-toe? So one thing to notice is that you start with one player putting one of the markers. So let's say it is a cross. Now the second player cannot put a cross, right? So that is rule number 1. Has to place the second marker, that is A. The second thing is, important thing is, the player cannot place the marker on the same place. It has to be on one of these empty places. That's important rule number 2. Now, the third one is, as soon as a player makes 3 straight X or 0, any of the markers, the game finishes there and there itself. So for instance, if I played an X here and I put here and I put an X here, so I get 3x, the game is over right here. So even if in the next step this guy can complete the game too, it doesn't matter. The game ends right here. So that is rule number 3. Let us look at how to design each of these pieces in the Scratch software. So let's look at the rule 1. So the markers X and 0 are going to be put alternate. So if you think of how do we do this as we code in Scratch, it is about being able to remember and put a condition on something using variables. The second thing, one place can have only one marker. So again, since it is either or, like it is based on a simple condition that one location, one marker, you cannot allow that same place to be replayed, remarked. So again, variables can be used for that purpose. Now the third thing is, and this is something you'll have to do a little bit of more thinking because you may not have used it so much. That is, you have to be able to determine every time you play if 3 consecutive X or 0 have been achieved. And the moment it is done, the game is finished. Now to do this, you need to remember each of the positions and what value it holds. Now one way to do this is of course using tic-tac-toe is simple, it is just 9 blocks. So you can use 9 different variables to store the values and then check against all of them. However, there is a better way to do this, and that is to use another kind of a special variable. So let's look at how you've used variables before. A variable always stores one value at a time, right? You have used and you have seen this. The moment you set the value to something else, the previous value is forgotten. You have a new value. So variable is something which stores one current value only. Now in this case, you want to store many different values for corresponding to each of the 9 blocks. Now this is something which you use in your daily life a lot since when you're a kid. If you were going out, say grocery shopping with your family, you will create a list of items to purchase, right? So you will actually list down, wow, you want to buy rice, you want to buy some atta, you want to buy some dals, you want to buy, um, you know, maybe a lot of junk food, chips, noodles. You may want to buy dairy products. So you create a list. So when you create a list, you're basically saying that you're remembering each of these items in the list. And then what are the kind of things you do in a list? Is, for example, you may suddenly ask your parents, is my chocolate added to the list? So what are you doing? You're checking if something is present in the list. Yeah, so somebody looks at the list and says, yes, it is present and it is at third row on the list. Then somebody may say, oh, we have enough bag of chips. Let's not buy any more. So what are you going to do? You are going to delete the chips out of your list. So list is a very useful thing as you start to use computer to do more and more complex things. So in Scratch, many of you would have already noticed and observed there's something called list. You may not have really understood why it is to be used until you have used it. So this is your opportunity where now you're going to use list of 9 items. To start with, let's just keep simple, nice 9 items. So the way we will keep the 9 items is, it's a list, okay, but just to make you understand, I'm showing you your list having 3 columns because I want to see, this is tic-tac-toe, right? So this is your first row and first column, right? This is your first row and first column. This is your first row, but it is second column. This is first row and third column. So your first 3 items in the list are column 1, column 2, column 3 of row 1. Now your fourth item is row 2's column 1, row 2 column 2, row 2 column 3. So that takes your 6 items in the list. Then your 7th item is row 3 column 1, row 3 column 2 and row 3 column 3. Now once you have a list of 9 items, you can decide that initially these 9 items are empty. So when they're empty, you can decide them to leave them empty, or you can just give it any value, right? It doesn't matter. It's just marking it empty. And the moment it starts getting a marker, an X or a 0, you can just replace it with an X and a 0. So your list will start getting filled. Every time a marker is placed, you can quickly go and check if any of these rows have the same value, any of these columns have the same value, or any of these, either of these 2 diagonals have the same value. The moment it says yes, you say game is complete and you do not allow the players to proceed. You can give a message if you want. If the condition is not met, that means either of these has not happened, you allow the user to play the next marker. Let us look how are we going to execute, implement, code the 3 rules that we looked at, the primary 3 rules for tic-tac-toe. Now, what I'm doing is that I'm going to code it for the first slot here. Okay, I'm calling it row 1, column 1. So this is row 1, this is row 2, row 3. So for row 1, column 1, and then we can pretty much duplicate that entire thing for all these 9 slots. The first thing which we said, that we need to ensure that it is alternate player, right? So we need a variable which holds the turn for the player, and this is going to be a global variable. So we just make a new variable name for all sprites and we call it player turn. Now that is going to say whether it is X's turn or zero's turn. A list to store what is the value for each of these 9 cells, because we have to continuously, like after every play, we have to check whether the game has been won. So if you look down, the variable section is make a list, right? So you create a list and we will keep it for all sprites and call it TT board fill. Okay, that's what I'm going to call it. So you will see, if we keep the variable enabled, we'll be able to see the value. Okay, now what do we want to do for each slot? So we, of course, we want to set the position of it, because each of them are going to have a different position. Initially, I want to make sure that the costume is empty, right? And look at the setting of the variable. So we're going to set the variable. So player turn, we will set it at the board level. And now everything is going to happen based on the click. So we're going to get the events when the sprite clicked. And now our key thing, as we said, we want to do this only if it is empty. Use the if condition. So we can use the if condition to check what is the costume. So we're going to take the costume name. So we're going to say if costume name contains, what is the name? We have called it empty. Yeah, only then we should do this. So only if the costume name is empty, we will allow the user to mark X or 0 based on what is the, whose player turn is it, right? So we need to say, so we need another condition. So we need an if else rather. Yeah. So if the variable, which variable we are doing? Player turn. So if the player turn is X, then we set the costume to costume X. Else, if it is player turn is 0, then we set the costume to, right? And after completing this, we want to make sure that the player turn is reset. That's a very important thing to do, right? So we're going to say, after doing this, set player turn. Okay, this has to be done based on this. Set player turn to or set player turn to X. Player turn is O right now. Yeah, and see, now because it is not empty, we don't get to act on it. So we've got this piece done, the first two rules done. Now we're going to focus on the third rule. So we want to be able to store what is the value of it so that we can keep checking after every time the sprite is clicked. We immediately broadcast a message so that somewhere either maybe in this game board game we can keep checking. So we write the main function here to check, but after the moment the user is played, we can broadcast a message and we are calling it check board for win. Okay, so that is the code we are going to check. Now, before we broadcast, one important thing we have to do here is fill it up, fill the value correctly. So this is our list, right? So we want to make sure that we are inserting the right value. So let's see how do we insert things. So we can insert, replace item. These are the two things we can do with the list. So we are going to insert X at 1, or we are going to insert O at 1. Okay, so let's just do this again. So when we in fact click, this is empty. And now when we click on this, yeah, so in the position 1, it's got the X. If we duplicate this code and make this row 1 column 2, what are the things we have to change? We have to of course change the position first. So we have to change the position. So we've set the position for this. So we just replace this. We're going to just replace this. Yeah. Now the key thing which we have to change here is we have to change this position at location 2. Right? Now if we have done all the right things, so let's execute this code. We clicked here, so player turn is O right now. So when the sprite clicked, there you go. So what has happened? If costume name is empty, it has checked if player name it was O, so it came to else, it switched costume to O and it turned the player turn to X, and it has inserted at second position O. But something is going wrong in our list. Why is the first one no? So let's look at list again. So every time I'm clicking it, the list is going on expanding because we are saying insert. So it's just inserting it. So instead of insert, we will say replace item 2 with X. Yeah, this is going to go. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to say replace item with O. And same thing here. So replace item 1 with X. And replace item 1 with O. Okay. So let's start again. So we're going to click on this. So now we've got the position 2, we've got the position where. So here we got it. So what we learned is that in list, if we keep inserting, it will keep increasing, adding to the list. So we need to make sure we use replace. Now one of the things which I also did when we initialize the list, I set all the values to 8. So now we move to the next big code, and that is to check if our port, if we have won it, like we have broadcast this message, check port for win. Duplicate this code for all 9, and we make the 2 corrections every time, right? What is that? It's basically what is the number we are replacing and the position. These are the only 2 things we have to do. So why don't we take a short break while you do it, I do it, and then we can get back